It was like a question, what's your pickup line for Cate? I had a pickup line, and Ricky was like coming out with his own.
Mine was, you're my favorite Galadriel.
And Piotr, what was yours?
I'm middle class too.
Oh, I was going to say that. I'm middle class too.
Hello and welcome to Cut to Reveal, the show where we talk about storytelling, editing, things that are interesting to editors. And today, as always, I am with my two co-hosts, Erwann and Ricky. So today we're talking about software, which is very uncommon. We rarely do it, but we figured out that we have two topics that we want to mention regarding software, which is Final Cut Pro 11. We don't see like a new version of Final Cut that often. And the other one is a software that I had my eye on for quite some time right now, and it's called Sequence. It's actually cloud-based. It's supposed to be like a collaborative video tool. So we're gonna look into that, and why I think it's unique is the only NLE right now that I think like pushes boundaries of what NLE could be in the future. But first, I know that everyone wants to ask us a few questions.
You guys went somewhere without me. So how was Camerimage?
It was good. So Camerimage is a cinematographic-focused film festival in Turan, Poland. It's the biggest type of film fest that just focuses on cinematography. A lot of bigwigs come. Cate Blanchett was the jury president this year. They give out the Golden Frog to actors, cinematographers, editors, and whatnot. Normally it's like 10 days, I think.
It's usually like 8 days. It's Saturday till Saturday, I think.
There's 5 different theaters that you can go to, and there's one main. Basically, there's a competition aspect of it where like newer films go and compete, and then there's documentaries, and then films that we've seen before. Fox Searchlight was doing a 20 or 30 year anniversary. And so they were showing a bunch of their favorite films, the favorite 3 billboards. Because it's cinematography is the focus, a lot of the cinematographers are there and some of the directors are there, but it's mostly that. So you've got a marketplace that also is showing you the new cameras and the new lenses and anything to do with that. To be honest, this is the first time that I've been to a film festival that had like a market space like this does. But yeah, everybody who had anything to do with essentially production, lights and camera, lenses, a little bit of editing, they had assets there or things that you could either look at or test and whatnot.
How was it to find out that Poland is an actual country?
It blew my mind. I was like, what?
And that they do have electricity.
I stayed with Peter. He has a very nice house. It's very modern.
Do they have running water?
They do. Electricity and running water.
We upgraded last month.
It was fantastic.
You guys met in Poland for the very first time.
In real life, yeah.
So what did you do?
We basically watched movies all day long.
Strange at a film festival.
Between the films, we basically ate.
Mostly bread type stuff.
I think that summarizes the thing.
What is the one movie that you both enjoyed?
We were only there for about 3 or 4 days, so we didn't see everything. There were some movies that hadn't screened yet. From the movies that we saw, we watched about 8 or 9.
From a limited selection.
Conclave was the biggest one.
Worth seeing, that's for sure. Anyway, one of the private jokes that we came up with, you will see as we review the footage and maybe potentially post a video from the recordings that we captured on an action cam during the festival. It was like a question, what's your pickup line for Cate? I had a pickup line, and Ricky was like coming out with his own.
Mine was, you're my favorite Galadriel.
And Piotr, what was yours?
I'm middle class too.
Oh, I was going to say that. I'm middle class too.
We saw her from afar too.
God, and she didn't recognize you from the podcast.
She did not recognize us.
So Final Cut 11 was released a week ago, 2 weeks ago maybe. It was quite unexpected because Final Cut has been heavily criticized for the past, I would say, years, if not more. And the big thing that we got from that release was the implementation of AI, because that's the thing that we're going to see more and more. And we already see in Premiere and in DaVinci, Apple finally decided to dive in. The funny thing is that you have all these new capabilities, but when you look at the competition, it looks quite poor in a way because they just added the closed caption option. So it automatically finds the subtitles for your dailies, but it's only in English. It's only in English when Premiere has been doing it for years.
Yeah, 3 or 4 years. Yeah, exactly. And I think they have like 14 languages or something like that. Although they don't have Polish yet. I'm still waiting. Adobe.
So the other thing is the magnetic mask. So it can follow quite closely anything you click on, even if that person is in movement, even if it chooses to encapsulate in the mask something else, you can very easily like take it out. It's really, really powerful. My NLE of choice when I'm working alone on a project from beginning to end, for example, working with YouTubers, was always Final Cut. For that kind of stuff, like it took me sometimes hours to make a mask on someone like moving around. With that, it's gonna take me a couple of minutes. I'm really happy with that, even if I know that's something that you can already find with other NLE. Because I was thinking for a while that Apple was going to drop Final Cut. Nothing new was getting released. Nobody was talking about it. And I was like, yeah, they're too much behind the competition. What DaVinci is doing, especially DaVinci, what Premiere is doing, even Avid is trying to implement some of that stuff that the other NLEs are doing. And I was like, they're gonna let it die. So yeah, in a way, I'm glad that they didn't. If they actually put the work in, it could become very powerful, because Final Cut has one thing that the other ones don't, is the magnetic timeline. It's the one thing that make me always come back to Final Cut when given the option. I don't have to think about the stuff that I'm moving around. And the other thing is skimming. In Premiere or DaVinci, you have to click in a specific place to be able to move. In Final Cut, wherever the skimmer is, you see the picture that is under it. You don't have to click somewhere. I love that. And I tried to mimic that in other NLEs and it never worked.
Yeah, I mean, you can do it in the thumbnail view. You can also skim, like basically like hover over the cursor, but I get it that it's not the same in Final Cut, right? And I do think that they own my magnetic timeline, but I don't think they own technology. I think they only own the name. So no one can call it magnetic timeline. The reason I'm saying that is that Sequence actually has a magnetic timeline, although they call it reflow timeline. Back in the days, like a few years ago, I made a video about magnetic timeline because I've seen Sven, this guy edits, he like quoted another certified expert in Final Cut, but he, for like simplicity reasons, he has mentioned that like you can't move things around like that in Premiere. And the way he has done it, he has shown like the way to change the order of the clips on the timeline. He has done it so inefficiently that I made a video about it. And I was like, okay, you don't have a magnetic timeline, but you can swap these clips very easily. And that's how you do it. But because of that, Final Cut has always been on my like radar, and like I've always been interested in trying that magnetic timeline. So I was looking into that new release as well. And a few other things that they added is now you can have projects up to 120 FPS. I don't know when you need a project like that, but that's one of the things they added. The other one is that you can hide clips in that section where you have your clips imported, right? So for example, when you create like a multi-cam clips, you can hide those original ones that were used for creation of multicam. And the other one is that you can use option arrows basically to move clips in a layer stack, and it works magnetically. So like while there is a shortcut for that in Premiere you have to have like a free space above that clip to move it up.
Now Final Cut, with the help of AI, is able to recognize like how many people there are in the shot and what is the size of the shot. It takes a bit of time, of course, but then you have like these files that are organized that way. But I mean, it's always good to have more organization when you're cutting. I think they're just going to develop that and it's going to get better and better.
So Sequence, by the way, you can find it at sequence.film. To give you some context, I found out about this software thanks to a guy who used to work in Adobe. And right now he works in this startup company, Sequence, right? And he told me about it, I don't know, like a year ago. He gave me like a presentation. And back then it was like in very early stages. Right now it's in a better shape than it was. And it gets some features that were definitely missing. I think just based on the conversation and what he has shown me a year ago, and I tried it a little bit as well myself, that it's very promising. And like you've mentioned that fact of like, you know, you being afraid that Final Cut might not be continued by Apple, right? And I can see how software like that working like it's supposed to, Apple could be dropping, because there is like a alternative with magnetic timeline as well. And they can't call it magnetic timeline, so they call it reflow timeline, but basically it works the same. You select the clips on the timeline, move them, and everything like reshuffles itself on the timeline, right? It used to be that there was like a limitation that you could just move like I don't know, like a limited number of clips. Right now you move groups of clips and it works fine. You can also move clips based on like WASD keys. So basically you select a clip and you use like, a gaming setup of keys to move the clips up and down, left and right. You can select clips like that. And a feature that they're working on right now is time travel feature. That's how they call it. Because it's going to be like a collaborative video tool, you will be able to see a project at any point in time. You can kind of like recreate almost like a time lapse, so to speak, of how the timeline has been edited.
That's quite ambitious.
Exactly, but I think they can do it because it's everything is cloud based, so every decision goes through the cloud anyway. So I think it's doable, and they're working on it right now. It's not released yet, as far as I know. And by the way, like all of the NLEs right now have to get on that AI train, but they take like a slow approach. They don't focus on any like AI generated images or stuff like that. They're focusing on what's more important, I think, to editors, which is AI cognition, the things that you've mentioned. So like you can basically ask queries to sequence, it will like give you the results. So it transcribes everything as well, right? And if you type in like, give me a two-shot where people talk about dogs, it will show you the clips where there are two people in the shot and they're talking about dogs, right? So there is this AI cognition capability included, which I think, again, is more important than this generative stuff that Adobe is focusing on right now quite heavily.
To you, what's the one thing, or what are the things that you can't find in the other NLEs that will attract you toward sequence?
I think that the ease of working together on the timeline, because you have like team projects in Premiere, but they're not like super intuitive, and you can get used to it, but they're not like foolproof. And what Sequence does, and what it's aiming to do at least, everything is in the cloud. So basically one person uploads the footage or just imports from the link if it's already on Dropbox or something like that. It lives there in Sequence. So basically you need to just share the link. I will basically upload the footage to Sequence and share the link with you, and you can start working on it right away. And what's very important is that we can even edit at the same time, even on the same timeline.
Yeah, I don't know if that's the best either.
But obviously there are limitations to that. So you can like give like certain roles and like limit the, what a certain person can do on the timeline. But in theory, you can have two editors working simultaneously. Parker mentioned that the founder of Sequence, his goal is to make Sequence so good that like feature films will be edited on it. They're aiming high, not just for, it's not like CapCut where they're focusing on like, entry level editors.
The thing is, I'm wondering how many people want to be cutting on the internet, on the cloud. And so I'm wondering how well this could work for actual film editors. Editors and post-production people don't want to change because they're used to it. Like even if Premiere and DaVinci are way easier and more powerful, it's so well implemented in the editing world, Avid, that people don't want to change.
And people still convert to it too. I've heard of a number of editors who are like, I was Premiere, I was DaVinci, and now I'm Avid. So it's not like a dinosaur where it's like eventually going to go, once the people that are like into it are like, I'm done with editing, like it's going to fall off after that. People are still falling in love with Avid, I should say.
There are reasons for that. For those bigger productions where you actually need to give like permissions and stuff like that, Avid is still has some features that aren't there for other NLEs. Also, script sync you don't really have in other NLEs.
I'm just wondering out loud how well a new NLE could do within that market.
I think that's a very valid concern, very valid. And I also thought about this. I'm like, will they survive? Because they're trying to do something ambitious, but at the same time, one of the reasons you can't find them is because they haven't really launched officially yet. So it's still just for early adopters and they're not really marketing it in any way. Once they launch, like my question is, will they be competitive enough to charge for it? Because if it's cloud-based, it won't be cheap. It won't be like $5 a month. It will be more expensive than that. And people are switching from Premiere to Resolve for the reason that Resolve is free to use, right? That's the main reason people are switching, in my opinion. Like Premiere has slightly better editing capabilities than Resolve, and is much more customizable and stuff like that. But also, I just want to mention, because you've mentioned that concern of like not being connected to the internet. I don't think that bad connection really matters that much, but you have to have a connection for that. But I think it's basically what it's using is just like the streaming of the visual desktop. So I think it it will be like TeamViewer, so to speak, when it comes to like the requirements for the internet speed, right? So I think it should be good. But the advantage of cloud-based is that you don't have to buy a great computer. You can have like a MacBook Air or something like that, and have a screen connected to it. So these are all advantages as well.
If they manage to market that stuff and to be competitive with their prices, that could be the next big NLE.
It could be, but can it be? That's the question. The last thing that I want to mention about Sequence is that I'm still waiting, and I think that's one of the roadblocks for them before they can really release it, is that right now it doesn't support professional formats. So it supports H.264, H.265, but it doesn't support ProRes, it doesn't support DNX, and it doesn't support B-RAW. And I think these three formats are really important for like average viewer these days, for like average YouTube creators.
Yeah, you can't use it if you don't have that.
Once they do, I think they will be closer to launching the thing, which will probably happen in 2025 officially. But we'll try it out and we'll let you know, guys.
All right, and that's it for this episode, dear listener. So as always, we want to hear from you, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So you can reach out to us by email at podcast@cuttothepoint.com. We'd love to hear your voices, so you can leave a voicemail with us at speakpipe.com/CTR. And then our social media is Instagram at Cut to Reveal. We also have a YouTube channel where you can also sometimes see us as we talk shit, and that is at Cut to Reveal. And then, a lot of these streaming places that we have, you can also like and subscribe. If you can leave a review, that would be great. But also, just tell a friend. We want you to let other people know that we're out there and stuff, because that would be really, really helpful also. So with that being said, we hope you have a great day. So take care.